Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Awesome stuff, OP. You were the hero your neighbors needed, not the one they deserved. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe at the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Gotta say it out loud. I don't live in an HOA, but we still have a neighborhood region as designated by the city, and once a month anyone who wants to gets together with our local police department neighborhood relations officer, and usually our district city council rep. Well, as you can imagine, we have a few people who are the type who would dream of being on an HOA board. Well, we had that monthly meeting a few days ago, and one of my most lovely neighbors shows up with this guest in a bit of a suit. After the routine stuff, she points out that she failed to have time to speak. She gets up, introduces, I honestly don't remember his name, and starts talking about how she would like for us to listen to him explain the benefits of bonding our neighborhood together in an HOA. Well, I'm sitting up front as usual and couldn't help but blurt out FHOAs while trying not to laugh. She looks surprised, stares at me, and says, "Excuse me?" So I pop to my feet. Okay, we're on the north side, not the southwest. Most of us are fighting to make it month to month, and we have to pay a few hundred extra to some suit for what might sound good, but guess what? Trash can on curb past 7 a.m. on pickup day or out before 11 p.m. the night before? Get a fine. Lawn over 2 inches high for more than 24 hours? Get a fine. House doesn't match stipulated paint colors? Get a fine and fix it within 14 days. Feed the stray cats? Looking at a lady who does so? Get a fine. Look to another neighbor. Put out winter protective boxes so the strays don't freeze to death? Get a fine per box. Judy kept trying to interrupt, but I ignored her. Working on your car in your own drive? Yep, another fine per day. And guess what? You fall behind, they put a lien on your house, put you out, and either rebuild it or tear it down and build something new to upsell and eventually push as many out as possible to replace us and elevate the neighborhood, all while making themselves rich off stealing our properties. I'll never sign anything, Judy. The room looked back to her like they were looking to commit a lynching. Needless to say, it went nowhere. He tried to talk up his points, but thanks to those of you here who've shared your suffering, I had counters to everything he threw out. Thank you all for preparing me for a day I didn't see coming. And our second story. Okay, I'll open up the truck. This is not my story, but something I heard had happened to the previous driver of the truck I drove for a while. I'm not sure if this skims Rule 4, but I'm sure that the mods will let me know. I'll tell you the context from my perspective first, then what happened to the previous driver. On with the show. So I was working for a company that subcontracted to an international freight corporation who had depots in Brisbane and Sydney, Australia. Every afternoon, I used to drive the truck around to the International Freight Corporation Brisbane depot to load up and then drive it halfway to Sydney overnight. I would swap trucks with my counterpart that was coming the other way in another truck, then drive back to Brisbane, unload, and go sleep in my own bed. Sweet driving gig. Now, some of the freight in the truck was domestic, but most of it was international that it just happened to land in Brisbane, but its final destination was Sydney. Because of this, it was still under customs bond, and as a result, the International Freight Corporation staff completely locked the back of my truck, and I did not have a key. The only other key was at the International Freight Corporation depot in Sydney. I instructed them how to load it, I strapped everything down, then they locked it up tight. This will be important later. Now in Australia, each state manages their road network, and especially for trucks, they have weighbridges placed strategically that are staffed by inspectors that have a huge amount of power. If they deem that something's even vaguely out of spec, they'll make you park your rig until it's fixed. I heard of one driver who got made to park up because his B-double was 50 millimeters too long. These inspectors can go over your truck with a fine-tooth comb if they want to determine not just roadworthiness, but also if it's loaded correctly. They have the authority to make you open up the back of the truck to check your load is properly secure, and this is where we finish the setup context and get to the malicious compliance. So the previous driver, who we'll call Jim, had loaded his truck at International Freight Corporation, they locked it up tight, and Jim drove off down the highway. He got called into the weighbridge where one of the inspectors had decided to be extra malicious with everyone that night, not quite understanding how it was going to backfire. The inspector demanded that Jim open up the back of his truck. Conversation as follows. Inspector, open up the truck. Jim, I can't, mate. I don't have a key. Inspector, I don't care. You're not leaving here until you open the back of the truck. Jim, are you sure? Okay, then. Jim called home base and told them what happened. Home base called International Freight Corporation, and the ball of crap starts rolling with ever-increasing speed. Because it was an International Freight Corporation secure truck, it took them 8 hours to get the International Freight Corporation branch manager and the International Freight Corporation security manager to the weighbridge with a key. And because it was customs bonded freight, they bought with them the head of customs in Brisbane, the head of the Australian Federal Police in Brisbane, and they also roped in the director of the state's transportation authority. Some of the biggest transport and customs heavyweights in the country descended on this power-tripping little Hitler at a roadside weighbridge. Rumor had it he suddenly developed a stutter. Now, I don't know what happened to that individual, but from then on, International Freight Corporation trucks still went over the weighbridge, but they were never inspected for roadworthiness. If one of their axles was a little overloaded, the driver was given a fine, which the company paid, and waved on to continue driving. And our last story. Dad passed away. His condo HOA sent me a nasty letter since I'm not 55 plus. My dad passed away unexpectedly last spring, and I was the executor of his estate. My mom passed 2 years earlier, and I didn't know Dad updated his deed after Mom died to a ladybird deed, transferring the condo to my sister and I equally when he died. This meant we didn't have to go to probate court, thank God. It's good to note that the deed immediately updated in the county record system upon his death, and our county allows public searches of these records. His condo was in an over 55 community common in Florida, and I lived about 15 minutes away from him. Despite the death being unexpected, I was able to clean out the condo, freshen it up, do some repairs, donate, list, and sell items, distribute family pieces to other family members, hire a realtor, and list it within 3 weeks of his passing. This was no small feat as I work full-time for a tech startup, so many work hours, am a single parent, and my sister lives in the Midwest. The first thing I had to do was get the death certificate and deed to submit it to the HOA and security office to have my name and phone number as the owner at the guarded gatehouse, so I'd be called when contractors, donation centers, and potential buyers went there. The HOA was aware of the death. They had a copy of the certificate. A month after his death, 1 week after the condo went on the market, I get a nasty letter from the HOA demanding proof that I'm 55 plus because blah, 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 our community, blah, blah, standards, rules. I ignore the letter because nothing I'd respond with would be productive, and I wanted to not make waves when it came time for a buyer to get approved by the HOA. 4 months later, we get a buyer, go into contract, and she submits her HOA application, and we wait. Week 1, week 2, week 3, no response from the HOA. I, my realtor, the buyer's agent, and the buyer all call and email asking for an update with no response. Every month I'm paying bills out of his account, including HOA fees, renewed property insurance, and had to stop over there every few days to make sure all was good. My grief was coming out sideways since I didn't really address it. I focused on the estate tasks. I finally had enough. Here are some snippets of the email I sent to the HOA when I again requested an update on the approval. This was the only thing holding up the closing. HOA has absolutely no problem sending a terribly cruel and insensitive letter to me asking for proof that my sister and I are over 55 to have the right to own property and community. Sending that letter so soon after his death is unconscionable. However, your team can't be bothered to answer emails and return calls. HOA and property management company know that the property was transferred as part of a death because I went to the HOA office to update the owner record and security office, and to do so, I had to provide a copy of the death certificate in both instances. Your office knows the unit is on the market because my realtor provided her information to security. There's a lockbox on the door, and the security logs show numerous showings. You know it's on the market because I paid $50 for the budget, financials, and HOA documents from your office to give it to my realtor. At the time I received the letter, the property was already on the market. Dad passed away on date, and I had that condo on the market the first week of May. I've done everything in my power to get it on the market and in contract with a 55-plus-year-old buyer to stay within your guidelines. Could you personally turn around an estate while grieving so fast? I did, and I'm trying to finalize this last piece of the estate so my family can start closing this open wound. Whomever is monitoring deed transfers needs to do the morally right thing and double-check that you're not sending nasty grams to relatives of the deceased so soon, and cross-check to see if that relative is doing their level best to sell the property. A simple realtor or Zillow search will show if it's on the market, or maybe just talk to the people within your office. This is a senior community, and I cannot be the first or only executor of an estate that was passed to someone under 55. This can't be new for this area. Or maybe I'm rare, seeing as both my parents are gone before I even turned 44. Please note that my parents didn't have a mortgage. This sale is all profit for the estate. I could have put the condo on the market at a lower price that would guarantee a quicker sale, but I didn't want to hurt property values and comps for the neighbors surrounding my dad, who were very good to both my parents. This buyer is buying it for $90,000 more than my parents did in 2010. You'll see that I've not paid the November HOA payment since our closing date should have been in October. If your team has turned this around in an appropriate time frame, you can get November's prorated portion of the HOA fee from me and the buyer during the closing. Want your money? Do your job and send the approval letter, and I'll be able to complete my job by ensuring someone who is 55 plus owns the property. These effers sent the letter via email within an hour of my email. No message in the body of the email, just the approval letter attached. The day of closing, I did give the daytime security guard a thank you card with a gift card for all of her help and extra work created by having a ton of businesses and buyers come through the gate. She actually saw me an hour after he died when I ran over there to get items for the funeral home. I'll always remember her kindness each time she'd see me. Hey guys, thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.